My daughter asked me to watch her grandkids. After I arrived, she handed me a credit card and said, "This is all you're getting." I just smiled. She didn't know the cards were tied to a donation app and her credit limit disappeared. And now she's begging for my forgiveness. My name is Arthur, and for 65 years I've been a man who built things. Not just houses and cabinets with my own two hands, but a life, a family. I worked in construction my entire life, putting in 60-hour weeks with calloused hands and a back that remembers every beam it ever lifted. My greatest project, I always thought, was my daughter, Charlotte. I gave her everything. I paid for her college, her first car, even the down payment on the beautiful, sprawling house she now lives in with her husband, Mark. For years I told myself it was worth it. They were my flesh and blood. But as I got older, I felt a shift. My phone calls became shorter. Visits were rarer. The love I felt for them, a deep, foundational thing, began to feel like a one-way street. They saw me not as a father, but as a resource. My retirement savings, my small but comfortable pension, even the classic car I'd spent 20 years restoring, they saw it all as theirs to claim. A future inheritance they were already trying to spend. The final straw came with a text message. A simple, cold request from Charlotte. "Dad, we're going on a trip to Hawaii. Can you watch the kids for us? And maybe put some new landscaping in? The yard looks terrible." No, please, no offer to help with travel, just an assumption that I would drop everything and come running. I knew they just wanted a free babysitter and handyman. A burden they could dump for a week so they could bask in the sun and post pictures on Instagram. I told myself one last time that it was for my grandkids, Leo and Emma. They were the only pure joy I had left in that family. I agreed, and a few days later I was at their house. The house was magnificent, a testament to my years of hard work, but the warmth of a family home was absent, replaced by an air of cold calculation. Charlotte and Mark were too busy with last-minute packing to even offer me a cup of coffee. As I sat on the plush sofa watching them rush around, Charlotte finally approached me. A fake plastic smile stretched across her face. "Dad, thanks again for doing this," she said, her eyes already scanning her phone. "The kids know the rules. Don't let them have too much sugar, and their bedtime is 9 p.m. sharp." I took it, my fingers brushing against the cool, slick surface. Inside were 2 credit cards. I frowned. My own card was just fine. I didn't need hers. "What's this for, honey?" I asked, my voice soft. "Oh, just for groceries and stuff," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "You know, for the kids. Don't go crazy, though. The limit is low. And don't use it for anything other than absolute necessities." I had to pull a few strings to get it approved. The subtle condescension in her tone stung. It wasn't a gesture of trust, it was a way of limiting me, a way of telling me I wasn't worth their own money. It was the same way she had looked at me when I wore my old work boots to her formal dinner party, like I was a relic from a past she wanted to forget. "This is all you're getting," she said, her voice turning sharp, "and don't even think about asking for anything else. We're on a budget. You're retired, you don't need much anyway." The weight of all the years of sacrifice, of all the money I had given them, of every single time they had taken me for granted, came crashing down. The pain was so sharp, it almost brought tears to my eyes. But then something snapped. The pain wasn't just pain anymore, it was fuel. I didn't just feel defeated. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my gut. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, the old man she saw, the one she thought was weak and naive, was gone. I just smiled. I smiled a slow, knowing smile. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. She didn't notice, she was already too busy. "Thank you, darling," I said, my voice as calm as a summer lake. "That's very generous of you." She had no idea. She didn't know that my company, the small construction firm I had built from scratch, was a pioneer in financial technology back in the day. She didn't know that I had consulted on the very software that many of today's banks and credit companies used. She didn't know that I had designed a custom, encrypted donation platform years ago for a nonprofit. A platform that could be discreetly linked to any credit card account with the right back-end access. A system that could be triggered remotely and drain a credit limit in minutes, all with legal and technical safeguards that would make it look like a series of legitimate, pre-authorized transactions. I looked at the cards in my hand. They were not a burden, they were a gift. A perfect, beautiful, poetic gift. She didn't know that the old man she had just dismissed was about to show her what a man who builds things can do when he decides to tear something down. Her credit limit, the very symbol of her supposed superiority, was about to become a monument to her greed. And so, as the sound of their suitcases rolling away faded into silence, I sat back, took out my old, worn-out laptop, and began to type. The first step was already complete. The next was to wait. The house fell into a quiet rhythm once Charlotte and Mark were gone. The kids, Leo and Emma, were a delight. Unlike their parents, they were kind, curious, and genuinely happy to spend time with their grandfather. We spent the first few days building a magnificent fort in the living room, planting a small herb garden in the backyard, and I even taught Leo how to make a proper, old-fashioned hamburger patty from scratch. These were the moments I lived for, the simple, honest connections that my daughter and son-in-law had traded for a life of excess and status. Meanwhile, a few states away, a different kind of quiet was taking hold. My phone, which I kept with me at all times, buzzed with notifications, discreet automated alerts that I had set up weeks ago. I wasn't just watching the kids, I was watching something else, something far more interesting. On the third day of their vacation, a message came through. The first charge, a modest one, $250. It was flagged as a donation to a local youth sports league. Then came another, $500 to a charity that supported displaced veterans. I had created a series of small, legitimate-looking nonprofit entities years ago as a contingency plan for a project that never materialized. Now, they were a perfect cover. The transactions were designed to appear as pre-authorized, scheduled gifts that had just recently been activated. The bank, seeing a long history of charitable donations from a different, legitimate account linked to the same owner, wouldn't question a thing. The genius of the plan was its simplicity and its irony. Charlotte had given me a credit card to use for necessities, a card she had told me had a low limit. What she didn't know was that her main credit account, the one she and Mark used to fund their lavish lifestyle, had a high six-figure limit, and she had linked those two accounts months ago, thinking it was a convenient way to monitor my spending. But in doing so, she had created a backdoor that I, a man who had literally designed some of the doors in question, knew exactly how to use. The cards she had given me were merely the key. Back in my retirement, I had tinkered with my old systems, perfecting the donation app. It wasn't about stealing their money. It was about redirecting it, reclaiming the dignity they had stripped from me, and giving it to people who truly needed it. I was a man of integrity. I would not take their money, but I would make sure they couldn't spend it, not on themselves. The alerts continued. Day 4. $1 or $200 to a foundation for single mothers. Day 5, $3,500 to a local shelter for the homeless. The amounts grew exponentially, a meticulously calculated algorithm I had coded years ago. Meanwhile, Charlotte's calls and texts started coming in. They weren't to check on the kids, they were to check on me. "Dad, I just got an alert that our account is getting close to the limit," she said on a rushed call. "Are you spending a lot on groceries?" We didn't expect to see so many charges, just some good healthy food for the kids. And the park entrance fee was a bit more than I thought it would be. "Don't worry, I'm keeping a tight budget." "Dad, we've already hit $30,000 in charges. What are you buying?" $30,000, oh that can't be right. The only things I've bought are some new art supplies and a few books for the kids. Maybe you should call the bank. There must be a mistake. Dad, Mark and I are stranded here. Our hotel card just got declined. We can't even pay for dinner. You should check into it. It's a shame. All that hard-earned money just disappearing. She had no idea what was happening. Her arrogance and assumption that I was a senile old man who couldn't even use a credit card properly were her own undoing. She was so focused on the money she thought she controlled that she never once considered that the old man she had humiliated was now the one holding all the cards. By the end of the week, the alerts showed the final balance. Her credit limit was completely gone, 0. Drained into 100 different charitable funds, all legitimate, all irreversible. The quiet satisfaction that spread through me was a feeling I hadn't known in years. I wasn't vengeful. I was at peace. That night, as the children slept soundly, exhausted from a day of playing, I sat by the window, my laptop screen a faint glow in the darkness. My work was done. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had turned their greed into generosity, their condescension into chaos. The true test, however, was yet to come. The climax was about to begin. The confrontation, and I was more than ready. The plane landed late that night, hours after their planned arrival time. I had a feeling they were delayed, and the frantic, angry text from Charlotte confirmed it. "Dad, we had to take a red-eye. The card was declined at the airport. Our flight was almost canceled. I'm calling the bank first thing in the morning." She would find nothing but legitimate transactions, all signed off with the encrypted, pre-authorized codes I had built. She would be met with a friendly banker telling her she had been incredibly generous with her donations and that the bank was proud to serve such a giving client. There was no fraud, just a simple, poetic financial reality. I was in the kitchen making pancakes for the kids when the front door burst open. It wasn't a gentle sound. It was an explosion of anger and disbelief. Charlotte and Mark stomped inside, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes wide with a manic fury I had never seen. "Dad, what did you do?" Charlotte screamed, her voice hoarse from rage. She threw her phone onto the granite countertop. The screen was still on, showing a bank statement with a list of thousands of transactions to unknown charities. "This is all your fault. Our credit is gone. Our trip was ruined. What did you do with all that money? I'm making pancakes for the kids. They'll be up any minute. Don't play dumb, Arthur. We know you did something. The bank said it was all you. They said the transactions were linked to the cards you gave me. The cards you told me to use. The cards you explicitly said to me, 'This is all you're getting.'" They had no idea I had heard their contempt. They had no idea how deeply their words had cut. "I just used the cards you gave me," I said, my voice soft. "I've always believed in giving back, you know. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity, and since you said I couldn't spend any more of my own money on myself, I decided to do what I do best. I built something. I built a way to turn your selfishness into a blessing for others." You can't do this." "That was our money. We needed that for the new car, for the landscaping, the money you were going to use to buy things you don't need while you treated me like a beggar, like a burden. That money, you gave me the keys to your kingdom. And you didn't know I built the castle. You didn't know the cards you gave me were a Trojan horse, full of all the dignity and value you thought you had stripped from me." Their world was collapsing. All the wealth they had flaunted, all the comfort they had assumed was theirs, was gone, drained. And they had been the ones to give me the power to do it. "You can call a lawyer," I said, my voice now firm and final. "You can tell them everything, but they'll find nothing. All the donations are legitimate. The agreements are signed. The money is gone. To charity. To people who need it. Just as I always intended." "No, dear," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I'm your father, and I finally taught you the lesson I always should have. That respect isn't earned by what you have, but by how you treat those who gave you everything." I had no doubt that they would try to have me arrested, but I was confident that my plan, meticulously executed and legally sound, was beyond their reach. The true punishment wasn't legal. It was the crushing weight of knowing that their greed had been the very thing that destroyed them. I drove away in my restored classic car, the engine purring like a contented cat. I didn't feel rage or sadness. I felt free. I had been a prisoner to their expectations for years. Now I was my own man again. I could go on trips, visit old friends, and finally live a life of peace and dignity. My phone buzzed. Another call from Charlotte. I looked at the screen. The words "my daughter" flashed, followed by a frantic, desperate face in a video call. I just smiled. The tears, the begging, the empty promises of a changed heart. They were all there, but it was too late. I had already given her all she was going to get. I put my phone on silent, turned on the radio, and drove off into the sunrise. My old life was over, and a new one was just beginning.